Hello and welcome back. We hope you had a nice break, and now it's time for the panel of the day. Effective pitches persuade editors with stories that make a difference. Pitching can be tricky, challenging, and sometimes frustrating, but the reality is that editors receive dozens and dozens of pitches every day. So you need to stand out among the crowd. But how to do it? How to create a pitch that is going to make editors fall in love with? To do so, we have a special panel, and we want to invite Abigail Edge, a freelance journalist and author, who will be moderating this conversation, and our panelists, Josephine Smith, executive editor of the New Humanitarian, Lola Garcia Ajofrin, senior journalist from Outriders, and Lola Hierro, writer and editor at Planeta Futuro El País. Welcome all.
Thanks, Anna. I'm really excited for today. We don't have much time, so I want to get straight into it. Just checking I'm not on mute. No, good. So we're going to start off today's session with some presentations from our panelists, and then there'll be some time for questions at the end. Lola G, shall we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Hi, hello. So my name is Lola Garcia Ajofrin from Outriders. We do innovative journalism. We cover global issues.
Do you want to just tell us a little bit about what Outriders does?
Yeah, sure. So who are we? We are Outriders, a non-profit newsroom based in Poland. We work with international team of reporters in different countries. What we do, we cover global issues with a local impact. But what we do different, we do traditional journalism, but we use an innovative format or approach. We do interactive stories, cross-border stories, comics, news game. This is a news game that we did with the strategies to the COVID-19. This is a diary in the north of Syria that we did by WhatsApp. And we work with different visual storytellers, journalists, photographers, filmmakers, illustrators. We have a section about power, which is focused on climate change. Mm-hmm. And what we look for freelancer is especially a solution journalism approach. So we will talk more about it later, but you can see here our details on how we would like that you send us a pitch, but this is what we do here.
There we go. Oh, I can see your presentation now, Lola. It's come up.
I think we can do it. So yeah, now we can see the video together.
I can see it.
Okay, thank you. So this is what we do in Innovative Stories. We cover global issues with different formats. We try to do traditional journalism as we did always, but we do it in an innovative way, using comic, interactive stories, cross-border news games. And we have a special focus on solution journalism approach. Instead of covering just the challenges, we like to cover the solution approach to these challenges. This is the people that we work in Outriders, and we have reporters in different countries. Right now, Fatima is working in a story in Afghanistan. Luis is working in Kenya in a story. So we like to work with local reporters, and we work with different visual storytellers. Designers work with developers, with photographers. Currently, for instance, we are working in a series of postcards And we are working with watercolorist painting. So we write the stories and they paint with watercolor these stories. So we try to combine different formats. And we especially focus on environment. So for those who want to pitch a story, as I said, we especially focus on solution approach, and we are open to receive some pitch about climate change and different strategies to combat it. I don't know if you would like me to explain a little bit more on how to work with freelancer, or you prefer to.
Yeah, you've got some information on there already. You could go over that briefly, and then we can discuss it in a bit more detail when we come to the questions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so shall we move on to the next presentation then? I was expecting Chaku to be in the show, but he's not here. I've just seen a message to say that he can't make it today. Maybe we'll be able to get some information on how you can pitch BBC Global News over email, and we can post that to the EJC website afterwards. So let's move on. Let's hear from Lola H. and see your presentation, and then if you've got any questions for either of the Lolas, you can ask them after the presentations.
Hello there. Hello, everybody. I am Lola H. Lola Hierro from El País newspaper. El País is a major Spanish newspaper in the world, and I belong to the section Planeta Futuro. It is a project that we started in 2014 together with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And we have around 3 million unique visitors each month. We are a proud team of 5 women in the newsroom. And we work around with more than 300 contributors around the world in every country. I'm going to share my screen to show you how Planeta Futuro looks like. Yeah, here it is. This is Planeta Futuro. Today we are opening with a report about the Nyarongo volcano in Congo. And this is how we work. We are focused in the Sustainable Development Goals, all of them, because our mission is to strengthen the coverage of this, the 2030 agenda, especially in Spanish language. Okay. Anyway, our main language is Spanish, but many of our articles are translated into English or Portuguese because we have many readers in Latin America and, of course, Brazil. Talking about the development goals, we are especially focused in everything related to end of poverty, childhood, education, women's rights, and global health, especially HIV, malaria, and TB, and also neglected tropical diseases. What else? We work both with traditional formats of journalism, report, photo galleries, etc. But we try to use also innovative formats like this one. This is a sample of a podcast that we are running since October last year, where we are showing the languages, the African languages that can be listened in Spanish, in Spain, sorry. We are working with African people living in Spain. We make interviews with them, and they speak in their mother tongue and explain us how they use it and everything. This is a feature that we have run from the newsroom. Also, this is a special coverage that we worked for a whole year, 1 year. In Senegal, we were explaining how the life in a town called St. Louis is regarding every aspect you can imagine. But then we also work with special features from contributors, like this one, for instance, about the big Virunga National Park in Congo. So this is what we mainly do. I would like to add that we love working with freelancers and contributors because we are only 5 in the newsroom, and we love to get pitches and to publish them. So this is all from me.
Great. So you can expect lots of pitches after this session then, hopefully. Great. And then Josephine, last but not least, let's hear from you.
Hi, I'm Josephine Schmidt. I'm the executive editor of the New Humanitarian, and I see that our homepage was shared, which is great. I invite all of you to explore the site while I speak. I will not be insulted if you're scrolling. You can find us at thenewhumanitarian.org. We are a not-for-profit newsroom covering humanitarian crises around the world and across the crisis continuum. So what that means is that we're there there on the ground, long before and long after the mainstream media arrives and leaves with the breaking story. So we cover the path out of war and toward peace, as well as the path toward war. We cover efforts to build resiliency, as well as the events and trends that threaten that resiliency for communities that are in the midst of political or economic upheaval or experiencing the impacts of climate change. We examine the needs at the heart of crises and also ways to alleviate those needs. We were founded within the UN in 1995 in the aftermath of the Rwanda genocide, and out of the conviction that fair, unbiased, on-the-ground reporting and consistent media attention could perhaps have helped mitigate or even prevent that disaster and certainly future disasters of such magnitude. We're now we're now completely independent. We're grant funded. We spun out of the UN more than 6 years ago with the determination to continue to report on crises that are largely undercovered by the mainstream media and to represent the voices of often marginalized groups within those crises, and also to serve as a watchdog over the multi-billion-dollar, largely taxpayer-funded humanitarian sector. So our mission is to inform humanitarian response and provide information that can be used to improve the lives of those living at the heart of humanitarian crises. So that's everyone from individuals and communities that have been upended by conflict, to the impacts of climate change, to environmental hazards brought about by storms or earthquakes. If you take a look at our homepage, you'll see our coverage areas are listed: aid and policy, conflict, environment, and disasters, migration. What that means is that our coverage may include, as it has over the last week, stories on everything from the repatriation of Iraqis from Syria's Al-Hol camp, to how monsoon and conflict are compounding Myanmar's post-coup food crisis, to how civil society peace activists in Cameroon are trying to end the conflict in the Anglophone region of that country. Today, we're publishing a piece on refugee access to COVID vaccines. Our reporting gives insight to policymakers, aid workers on the ground, and others who want to make the world more humane. We're a niche newsroom. Our audience is situated within the humanitarian sector. Our coverage is often travels to a very wide mainstream audience. To help that along, we're a big believer in collaborations. Recently, we've worked with Thomson Reuters, with Al Jazeera. We're based in Geneva, which is a hub for humanitarian organizations and the humanitarian operations of the UN. Though our small newsroom of about 14 staff and growing is dispersed around the world and was long before COVID. We absolutely rely on freelancers. About half our coverage is provided by contributors, and we work with our contributors in a spirit of wholehearted collaboration to shape and edit the story, to figure out the best way to present it, and to ensure it reaches the most influential readers. We're multi-platform and multimedia, and while the 1,200 to 1,500 word deeply nuanced reported story may be our hallmark, we believe fantastic coverage comes in all formats, from audiograms to reporters' video diaries. And we collaborate closely with our contributors, seeking to highlight the work of local journalists on the ground, as well as international journalists who are deeply committed to and familiar with a region or topic, and who are willing to recognize and credit their sources on the ground, which includes the contributions of journalists, often known as fixers. Finally, I would just like to add that we need and depend on your contributions, on your knowledge and expertise on the ground. So I really welcome everyone who's listening to think about how we may work together and get in touch. There are contacts on our site, And you can reach all of us with our first name at thenewhumanitarian.org.
Fantastic. Thank you, Josephine. Lots of information there. Excuse me. So let's go on to some questions. And actually, Josephine, let's start with you. In terms of the kind of stories that you're looking for at the New Humanitarian, if people want to pitch you, what are the 3 things that you look for in a really great pitch?
That's a great question. What we're looking for in a really great pitch is, why is this story urgent or timely? Why now? We publish 8 to 10 pieces a week. We have a small team, so everything we chose is chosen with a great deal of intentionality, and we need to leave many great ideas off our site. So we're really looking for a time peg or some trend or something that will tell readers, you've got to pick this up now. Our coverage, as you can imagine, is often is very heavy. So we and there are plenty of crises to cover. So we need to understand why your pitch needs to be heard now. We need to understand why this story is important to the reader. If someone's looking at the story at a promo on social, why should they care? Why should they invest their time? And we also really need to know, what's the secret sauce? What makes your piece unique? Is it the access that you have? Are you somewhere few people have been? Do you have fantastic multimedia? Are you looking at an ongoing situation with a new narrative? Are you looking at it through the lens of constructive or solutions journalism? What's the twist that will really make this story stand out from so many others?
Fantastic. So timeliness, why is it relevant to the audience? And what's the twist? In a nutshell, great. Lola G, I know Outriders focuses a little bit more on slow journalism. So how does the timeliness factor play into that? Would that still be something that you're looking for in a pitch?
Yeah, firstly, since we invest a lot of time and researches in each story, we look for different ways of telling a story. Not something that is breaking news, but something that you really look for another approach to this story. Something that I would like to say, I think when someone really believes in the idea, I think it's easier to communicate to the editor or to another person that you need to cover this. So to believe in the idea is one of the points. Secondly, as we said, we especially focus on solution journalism. So we prefer this approach. When you send the email, I would like to say, send a title. Even later you change the title of the story, but it's very important if you read a lot of emails to have this catchy title that you are going to continue reading. Yeah, I would like to say that this is.
Absolutely. Would you suggest that they put a proposed title in the subject line or actually further down in the pitch?
I think it's better in the email, but depend on sometimes if you work with visual materials and you have a lot of material already that you did, you need to send a portfolio or something, but something that really catch your attention in the email.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lola H, how about you? What are the 3 things that you look for in a successful pitch?
Well, Josephine and the other Lola had said very useful tips, so I can complete them. Talking about the pitch, not the report, only the pitch and what to do when you email an editor. Because editors are usually very, very busy in the newsroom, everything's a mess, and we don't have much time. We have to read and reply dozens of emails every day. So I will say that the easiest you make it for the editor, you're gonna get more success to get an answer, a fast answer, and to get your report published. So I will recommend don't write very long emails explaining all the report on it. Just as Lola said, give a title and a short explanation. And of course, be sure that the story you're going to pitch is something that you can publish in that section, because sometimes we get very good ideas, but they don't fit in Planeta Futuro, they fit in the politics area or whatever other. And also check that your story has not been published before, because sometimes we have also this problem that people don't know very well what they are selling. And then the last thing is that, from my point of view, if you send the report or all the material that you want to publish, I'm going to check it from the very beginning, so I can say faster if we want to buy your story or not. Because sometimes the idea is very good, but then the content lacks of data or whatever is not good enough. So we extending the time. We are making the contributors wait until they have a final response. And I know that freelancers, they also need to hurry up, and they need to know if they are going to buy or not they report to any media, or they can pitch to another one. So if they send all the pictures, text, whatever they have, we can take a good look on it and give a final answer. And this way everything goes faster for everyone.
Absolutely. It's a really good tip. I know as a freelance journalist myself, I will always do a site search on the particular site that I want to publish to, that I'm pitching, to see if they've covered anything similar. And if they have, it's not to say that I won't pitch the story, but I have to make sure that I have a different angle or a different approach to it. Great. So moving on to thinking about some of the things that freelancers get wrong, just really quickly, 2 or 3 things from each of you that freelancers do that you just think, oh, I wish they hadn't done that. I can't take this pitch, or it's something that frustrates you. Lola G, can you think of anything off the top of your head?
Yeah. I think one of the most common mistake is that you don't do the research before sending the idea. So maybe you sent an intention, a plan to do a story, but you didn't research. So I would say that you need to research like you're working already in this story before sending the idea. And secondly, that Lola Hierro mentioned before, sometimes there are very great stories, but if we are focusing climate change and you send something about a different topic, it's not something that we can publish right now. So research also about the place that you are pitching the story. But research, I think, is the most important for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Josephine, how about you? What are your top 2 or 3 bugbears in a pitch?
My colleagues have made great points. I think research is absolutely necessary. And I think one thing to really keep in mind when you're a freelancer, if your story is not taken by a certain publication, it doesn't mean it's a bad story. It just means it's not the right place for that story. That said, when we receive pitches, there has to be something more there than simply a good story. We often talk to people who say, all I want to do is tell a good story. That is fantastic. We all want to read a good story, but as a publisher, we need a reason to publish that story. We need to understand that that story is going to be found by audiences who can then have some impact. So when you're pitching, just be absolutely sure to tell me why I must read this story. What's the top line? What's the takeaway? What will I get out of this? No, it's not simply the narrative. It's not simply a character. It's not simply a beautiful anecdotal lead. It's what will I come away learning? What will make me feel smarter? What will help me in my everyday work? What will connect me to this world?
Mm-hmm. So relevance and research coming out on top there as both being really important. Lola H, how about you? Anything that annoys you about pitches or things that freelancers commonly get wrong?
Well, as I mentioned before, these kind of things like sending just a too short explanation that we don't know, we cannot decide if we are interested or not. Sometimes it's the opposite. They write very long emails, but they don't really say what they want to publish and why. But if I have to add something different now, I would say that I find that sometimes it's like, I think that we forget that we have the opportunity in this kind of media, like Outriders or New Humanitarian or Planeta Futuro, we have the opportunity to write stories that puts people in the front. We are not just writing like a short article for an economy section, for instance. So sometimes I find a lack of interest of putting the main characters of the story in the front. I think that reports and figures are very important. They have to be there, always there, of course, but this has to be complemented with the people who is affected by the story that we are explaining. And I will encourage the contributors to put their people in the front, the people of their stories.
Yeah, I completely agree. And actually, those are the kind of stories that I personally find more interesting when you've got, a lead character, for want of another phrase, who can essentially tell the story through the lens of their experience. It makes it much more relatable. And actually, just on that note, thinking about length. So Lola H, you mentioned there about not giving too brief of an explanation, but also not writing too long of a pitch. And this is something that the other panelists have touched upon as well. Do you have a specific number of paragraphs, or, how long should a pitch be?
In my case, well, just a paragraph that explains, as Josephine said, the five W's of the journalism: who, what, where, why, and that's all. I mean, a main title and a short explanation that, hello, I want to share this story about this and this and this with you because this and this and this. And here is the text and the pictures or the video in case you want to check it. And that's all, because this way I will read it and say, okay, I like the idea. So then I will read the text. Oh, this is a very good text. So, hey, my friend, we want to publish your story. Do you agree? Yes. So it's done. It's done.
That's great. I think that is one thing that sometimes freelancers overthink, and they end up writing reams and reams. So you heard it, one paragraph, guys. Well researched. Keep it tight. Keep it relevant. Okay, so thinking specifically, ladies, about the global development issues that you cover, are there any topics at the moment that you think you need more stories on, more pitches on? What needs more attention? What topics are a little bit uncovered at the moment? Josephine, let's hear from you.
Sure. Well, there are a number of regions where we are always looking for freelancers, everywhere from looking for English language journalists in Central America or Spanish language journalists who are comfortable working with English speakers, to Ethiopia and areas of Asia, such as Myanmar, etc. Looking beyond regions, though, we are always interested in constructive solutions, forward-looking coverage. And that's really hard to do when covering crises and disasters, because really what it is reporting on what's working. It's reporting on what's alleviating a crisis. It's often not very obvious. So we are looking for freelancers who are really embedded deep into a situation, into an environment, who understand a situation inside and out and are willing to put time into doing a longer, very nuanced story.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And Lola G, how about you? What kind of stories would you love to receive more pitches on?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we have a new section that is power, and it's about environment and climate change. So we are interested in stories about local responses to climate change. So instead of a big or wide topic, for instance, water, we really look for small stories in a local place that we are not able to find in other places. So local responses and about environment is something that we are looking for right now.
Right, lots of stories that people could potentially do about that at the moment. I look forward to reading some of them. I'm sure you're all going to get lots of pitches after this session. At least I hope so anyway. And last but not least, Lola H, how about you? What kind of stories would you like to receive pitches on at the moment?
Yeah, well, I have to stand for global health, I have to say, because in the previous meeting we had yesterday, you told us that most of the freelancers that are listening to us, they focus on climate change, gender equality, and that's perfect. And we are interested in climate change and gender equality, but I find that not many people writes about issues like the fight against malaria, HIV, and TB that are also in the global goals, and also the neglected tropical diseases. It's a bit uncovered, I would say. So we are very focused on these issues, and especially in the African continent. So, as Lola said, we are also looking for local stories made from the ground, from the field, and yeah, global health is our priority right now, I would say.
Excellent. I love that you each had slightly different responses to that question. So, whatever people watching are interested in, there should be something there that is relevant to you. So we have a few minutes left before we move on to questions from the audience. Do post those in the chat if you've got something that you want to ask our panelists that you haven't posted yet. In these last few minutes, ladies, I just would like to hear from you if there has been a particular pitch that you've received recently that you've loved and it's turned into a story that's done really well. If you've got an example to share just briefly, that would be great. So Lola G, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think during the pandemic, we tried to explain something that every media was covering, that it was a pandemic for the first time. And we did it with different formats. So we worked with a Brazilian reporter and a Brazilian comic illustrator in a comic about favelas, how the favelas were responding to the COVID-19 problems like that they were happening in the neighborhood. And we also did a news game about these COVID strategies. So these two stories were a different way to cover something that all the media were working at the same time. And I think also the readers were a little tired to read again about the pandemic. So we used this different form.
Excellent. And what is the best way for people to pitch you if they want to get in touch? Can you share your email and your Twitter?
Yeah, we can send you the email. Write us to team at weareoutriders.com, and I think it's the best way to be in touch with us.
Okay, so team at outriders.com, and presumably they should put pitch or something similar in their subject line just to flag it up. Yeah, great. Josephine, let's hear from you. What's a story you've been pitched recently that you've loved?
There are so many of them. One that stands out in my mind, though, is one we published a few months ago out of Libya by an Italian journalist, Sarah Critta, and a Libyan photographer, Nada Harib. And it was from a town called Tarhuna, which is still grappling with the trauma and grievances of one of the early waves in this ongoing war about 10 years ago, dealing with unmarked graves, with figuring out what happened a decade ago, with trying to find some sort of justice. Very heavy, could be a very, very depressing piece. But what worked so well was that the reporter and photographer spent a lot of time on the ground. And so that story was told by people who were of the town and from the town. We had a great deal of multimedia, beautiful portraits. We had audiograms. The text itself was quite nuanced in that it spoke to local officials, it spoke to government officials, it spoke to all sorts of people throughout the town, and really put readers in this place. And rather than making this situation a sort of abstract, very far away type of piece, it really brought it home, and it felt as if you were listening to the stories of people who could be your neighbors. And it did quite well, both on our site and through shares on social.
Sounds fascinating, Josephine. And again, it's telling stories through the lives of ordinary people rather than through facts and figures.
I think if I could just add, I think what really worked in that story was it was a true collaboration between the reporter, the photographer, and our editors and presentation team. So that's the way we love to work.
That's great. I know we've got a lot of freelancers in the audience who are big on collaboration too. So that's great to hear. And Josephine, what's the best way for people to pitch you?
People can reach out to any one of our regional editors. You'll find them on our site, on the team page, or at hello@thenewhumanitarian.
Great. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Lola H, what's a story you've been pitched recently that you've loved?
I would say 2 different stories to show that you can show different formats, and both are very good. On one hand, we have a multimedia feature called Lungs of the Earth. I shared it before. And I like this one because it's very innovative. It has a lot of multimedia elements. It's a very good work in terms of research and also writing. It's very beautiful to read it. And I like it also because we had the first part of this story like 2 years ago, and the journalist came and made the second part. So they have been following the story. And I like that very much. And then on the other hand, we have a very simple story in terms of it's only a text and some pictures. It's called The Real Story Behind the Murder of Sergio Rojas. He was an indigenous leader in Costa Rica who was killed. And it's a very big research, a very long text, but it doesn't matter because it's so cool to read it. It has so amazing work behind that you read it and you don't realize that time is passing by. I mean, it's very long. We don't usually publish so long stories, but in this case, it was it. Yes, so I would say these 2 very different but very good. Both of them. And I would say also, I would like to add that we accept contributions in English because we translate into Spanish. So the language must not be a problem for the freelancers. Okay.
That's great to know. And how can people pitch you?
Sorry?
How can people pitch you? What's
How?
email? Yes.
Yeah, email, sorry. The email is Planeta Futuro, like future planet, but in Spanish, planetafuturo@elpais.es. From España, es.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much to all of you. It's been really, really interesting and informative. I've certainly learned a lot. I'm sure our watchers have learned a lot as well. I think we might just have a couple of minutes for questions from the audience. So if you can stick around for those, that would be great. Angela, over to you.
Hi, Abigail. Hi, Josephine and Lola. Thank you so much for your contribution to this panel. I learned a lot. And then we have some questions from our audience. Let's start with Madrid No Frills. Madrid says, sorry, here it goes. I live in Madrid and pitch features to, for example, the BBC, The Guardian, the New York Times, but often get the response, we usually let our correspondents cover this. How do I get around this when pitching?
I'd say you could pitch to the New Humanitarian instead.
Good answer.
No, that is a frustrating answer. Unfortunately, just from my time at one of those large media organizations, that's often the case, that they will prefer to have their own correspondents cover the story. So maybe that's just not the right place for your story, or maybe you need to find a story that absolutely only you have and that is unique to you. And that's how you tempt them.
Somebody else wants to answer?
I would say that most of times correspondents are covering breaking news, but they with the news that we have every day, then they don't have time to cover different news. So I will try to pitch not breaking news, but other stories that are not on the that are not so recent, and you can make like a more research, and I don't know, maybe this way.
Okay, we have these questions from Laura Oliver. Lola Hierro answers it before, but for the rest, are the topics regions that are under pitch or alternative topics where you are inundated regularly with pitches?
Yes, first of all, topics, regions where Sub-Saharan Africa, we would like to have more journalists around, and especially local journalists. Um, Also, Southeast Asia and the islands. It's very difficult to find stories from that remote area. And then, on the other hand, something that I find is that always that we get a pitch from South America is about indigenous doing something. And it's okay that we have to publish a lot of things about indigenous rights, but there's more people in Latin America, not only indigenous people. So we also love to have other kind of stories.
I can move to the next questions from Leo Correa. Leo asks, is there any difference when the pitch is being offered by a text reporter, photo or video journalist? And he adds, for instance, when video journalist offers a piece, the newsroom also gives the support to complement the story?
Yeah, in our case, we work with visual reporters, so we do the developing in the newsroom. So, for instance, we work with a filmmaker, but all the developing process we do it at home. So we work with everything: reporters, illustrators, photographers, and we work in a similar way. But of course, we have a special focus on visual stories.
There is here another question from Carmen Ibanez Espinosa that goes to Lola Hierro. Do you buy the report already written, recorded, or filmed? Does the pitch have to include the piece already made?
In my opinion, it's better if you send everything you have in order to take a final decision. So yes, we can buy it. Sometimes we have new contributors that they have not written yet a story. And what I can say to them is, okay, I like your story, but until I read it, I don't know if it's good enough to publish it. So you have to take the risk. Maybe you write it, then it doesn't fit for any reason, and we cannot buy it. So it depends on you also if you want to take the risk.
So thank you very much, ladies. Thank you, Abigail, Lola Hierro, Lola G, and Josephine for being here today with us and for this panel. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you, all of our speakers and the participants, for being here today and for sharing your know-how and the time with all of us.
Labdien. Buenos días. Bos días.
Hi.
Hello.
This is the European Journalism Center.
Since 1992,
we've been helping journalists all over Europe.
Now we ask for your support.
Join the European Journalism Collective.
And with a small donation, you can help us remain independent and sustainable.
So we can continue supporting journalists just like you.
And do even more.
And do even more.
And do even more.